this morning, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said emergency services are actually trying to ramp up as they complete cleanup efforts from Helene. He says that's critical before Milton arrives.
We had a lot of debris left from Hurricane Helene on Florida's Gulf Coast. That creates a huge hazard if you have a major hurricane hit in that area this week.
CBS News correspondent Christian Benavides joins us from Tampa, Florida. Pressure mounting, Chris, to speed up the clean effort after Helene. But how is that possible since folks are already doing as much as they can?
Errol, it is just so absolutely challenging, and I want to give you a sense of how folks here in the Tampa Bay area are preparing. We're in St. Petersburg, and take a look at the line. We've got folks here that are waiting to pick up sandbags. I spoke to one man who said that he was in line for about 2 hours before getting to this point where he was able to actually grab some sandbags. He's in a Zone A evacuation zone, and they're already being told that they're likely to be evacuated. In fact, the evacuations here could reach up to Zone C. At this point, people are just sort of preparing for what could potentially happen. Keep this in mind that the Tampa Bay area has not had a major hurricane make a direct landfall since 1921. That's over 100 years ago, so it's truly something that would be untested for this area. Just around the corner from here, about 10 minutes away, we were in a neighborhood that was just that had about 6 feet of storm surge. 80% of the homes there were flooded, and people's belongings are just out on the street. There is so much concern, of course, about that debris as well, the potential for that debris to go flying and for it to clog up the storm drains as Hurricane Milton is barreling this way.
Christian, I'm hopeful that viewers there are heeding your advice and the advice from officials to get to a safe place, but we don't want to frighten people, but this is a serious storm on the way.
In the meantime, let's ride our video monitors down to the state of Florida. That state is once again in a path of life-threatening hurricane. We're talking about Milton that's now strengthened to a monster there in the Atlantic, a Category 5 storm. So evacuations are now underway just a day after Hurricane Helene wreaked havoc across the state, or days after. Governor DeSantis calling on all counties there to speed up debris removal ahead of Milton's landfall.
Local officials and their vendors must continue debris removal efforts for those areas that are in the potential path of this storm. My executive order requires debris landfill and dump sites to remain open 24/7 to accept debris from Hurricane Helene. We need as much of this debris picked up as possible. This creates a safety hazard, and it also will increase the damage that Milton could do with flying debris.
CBS News' Christian Benavides has been on the ground in Florida for the past week. He has more on the preparations for Milton and the race to recover from Hurricane Helene.
Reed, we're in St. Petersburg, Florida, and just take a look around me. This neighborhood is still recovering from Hurricane Helene, and now you've got Hurricane Milton on its way. Hurricane Helene struck here just over a week ago, and you can just see some of the debris that has been left outside. This is people's belongings that are out on the street, and you see this for blocks and blocks and blocks. At this point, this area is set to be evacuated. It is a Zone A, so there are mandatory evacuations that at some point will go into effect here. For now, folks are still here sort of gathering whatever they can from their home, whatever they can salvage from what was already a devastating flood event to take with them, and knowing that there is the potential for Hurricane Milton to happen not in a matter of days. The main thing here is that this debris, and what the concern is from officials, from Governor Ron DeSantis to local officials here, is that this debris will be flying, become projectiles. You also have the concern that this debris could potentially block some storm drains, making overwhelming system already overwhelmed by the floods. The Tampa Bay area, St. Petersburg is part of the Tampa Bay area, has not had a major hurricane make a direct landfall since 1921. So we're truly in uncharted waters if the track that Milton is currently on holds. Reed?
Christian, thanks. So he talks about the waters. We're going to borrow that as we talk about the fact that we're now at a Category 5, but the waters may actually break it up a little bit.
Well, right now it's strengthening it because where it's at just above the Yucatan Peninsula, those are record-breaking sea surface temperatures that it's currently over. That's allowing that strengthening factor. By the time it hits Tampa Bay, close to that area along the Florida coast, it will hit cooler sea surface temperatures, and that's what really helps break it apart. So at that point, closer to around a Category 3, that's what we're forecasting right now. I want to start off, though, with what's happening. As we head into the coming days, that track is still showing all in unison. It moved throughout Tampa Bay, moving over Orlando and back out closer to Daytona Beach, stretching along that coastline as it moves its way back into the Atlantic. That track is pretty certain right now, and as we take a look at where it's at, just within the past hour, it strengthened from a Category 4 to a Category 5, now with max sustained winds at 160 miles per hour. This is a strong system. It's rapidly intensifying as it's moving to the east around 9 miles per hour. A slow system right now for sure as it's gaining all that strength, and we just talked about those sea surface temperatures as well. As we head into the coming days, our Wednesday into Thursday forecast, that's when it's expected to actually break apart. But for now, Tuesday, it's holding strong. Wednesday, it's still sitting close to around a Category 4 as it enters those waters just outside of Tampa Bay, all the way down south along that coastline. Fort Myers, it's going to get impacted too. This is a strong system as it moves its way over the peninsula as we head into that Thursday, Friday forecast. Here's what's happening. We're already starting to see those light scattered showers in the forecast for us. Cloudy skies, giving them just a tease ahead to what's to come right around the corner. You break that hurricane apart in just 4 sections. It's that top right quadrant that brings in some of the heaviest rain and winds, and that's a major concern for us days ahead of the system actually impacting Florida. Now, storm surge is the other big concern too. This map is about to highlight. You'll see all that red color just along coastal areas like Fort Myers, Naples, and all the way up into Sarasota. We could expect anywhere up to around 12 feet of storm surge just along the Tampa Bay communities. I have more on that coming up in a bit, but for now.
We want to take you now to Tampa, Florida, where top FEMA officials and the mayor are giving an update for Hurricane Milton.
Coming off of Hurricane Helene, getting back up on our feet, but we need to take Milton seriously. The trajectory is still directly towards Tampa Bay, maybe a bit to the south, but you know how those predictions are. They are predictions. The interstate is just about at a standstill, so people are evacuating. The evacuation notice has been given for Hillsborough County, so please prepare quickly and get out of the city. What we have said before still holds true. You hide from the wind and run from the water, and you don't have to run far. You don't have to go to another state. You just have to get to higher ground. But this is going to be an event like none other. Helene was mostly a water event for us. This is going to be wind, water, storm surge, rain, you name it. It's going to bring everything towards our community. We're doing all that we can. As you all know, we work very well together here in Hillsborough County. We're doing everything that we can to keep you safe, but there is a level of responsibility. With this hurricane, we can avoid any loss of life if people listen and you evacuate, especially from that predicted storm surge. We are doing all that we can to get this household debris up off the streets. Unfortunately, we've run out of time and we won't be able to get the yard waste up. So do what you can to bring that into the garage, secure it in some way, whatever fashion you can. We've got the sandbag areas open for everyone as well. The storm shelters, my good friend Commissioner Cohen is here. He's going to talk about a lot of the things that the county is is doing. But again, federal, state, local, we are all working together to make sure that you are safe. But heed those warnings and listen. Get out as quickly as you can. Do not wait. Now, there's a lot of misinformation going around, and Archie will talk about this from TECO. Information saying that TECO is going to shut off the electricity, city's shutting off the water. None of that is happening. So pay attention to the reliable sources of information. City of Tampa, we couldn't have made it any easier. Text Tampa Ready to 888-777 for real-time information, and Tampa Lista to 888-777 for those alerts in Spanish. Again, we're here for you. Do your part, and we'll all be safe. Now, it is an honor for us to have the administrator of FEMA here. She has ridden around with us and looked at some of the harder hit areas in the city of Tampa and has brought the resources to our community. FEMA has been on the ground when we need them, and we couldn't ask for a better administrator. So I will bring Administrator Criswell up here to give some briefings. Thank you.
Mayor, thank you very much. I just want to reiterate to start out that Hurricane Milton is a Category 5 storm. It is a serious storm. It is going to bring life-threatening storm surge to many communities. And while you look at the cone of the storm, I want you to remember that the cone is just one part of the risk that we see. The cone is telling you where the strongest winds are going to be. I need you to also look at where the storm surge is expected to be up to, I believe, 12 feet right now, Mayor. Listen to what the mayor said. It was really encouraging to see people already starting to evacuate. We do not have to have any loss of life as a result of this storm, because all you need to do is go to higher ground into a safer location until the storm passes. Then once we find out what the status is of your home and the neighborhoods, we can work on what that longer term need might be. I just want to say that we already have over 500 FEMA personnel and other federal partners on the ground that have been supporting the response to Hurricane Helene across Florida, and we have several hundred more that have been supporting the previous hurricanes. I think this is the 4th or 5th hurricane in the last 3 years to take a direct hit on the western coast of Florida. So we have a lot of personnel that we are redirecting to be able to support initial response needs for this event, for Hurricane Milton. We're moving additional resources into the area, though, as well. We're bringing in search and rescue assets from the Coast Guard and the Air Force. We're bringing in our own urban search and rescue teams, Department of Interior. They'll all be available to support people as this storm continues to pass. My goal would be, though, that you all evacuate and I don't have to use those resources, but we will have them here so we can help support this. We're also bringing in our National Incident Management Team that's based right here in Tampa to support the mayor and her team as the storm passes, to keep that line of communication open and so we can move those resources into places that will be the most needed. We're also bringing in additional Health and Human Services assets to help with any hospital-related needs, Army Corps of Engineers to support any generators that might be needed following the storm to get these critical facilities up and running. I'll just finish really quick because there's a lot of speakers here, and I just want to say, unfortunately, I have had to work with Governor DeSantis and Director Guthrie too many times on storm response. But I can tell you that they know what to do. They are very good at responding to this, and it gives me great confidence to know that you will be in good hands. With that, I think I'm bringing up Representative Kathy Castor.
We have been listening to officials brief ahead of Hurricane Milton. First, we heard from Tampa Mayor Jane Castor, who's told everybody to take Milton seriously, saying the trajectory is toward Tampa Bay, but could hit toward the south, telling people to prepare quickly and get out. This will be an event like no other, the mayor said. Now, Helene hit them. She said that was mostly rain. This is wind, water, storm surge, and rain. And there's also a lot of debris left over from Helene that the mayor is asking people to try and secure inside their garages or whatever else they can do. We also heard from FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell, who says that emergency personnel is already on the ground providing support. The aftermath of Helene will be moved to the best places needed for Milton. We want to take you to Tallahassee, Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis is speaking to reporters about Milton.
There will be impacts far outside the cone, and these cones can shift. And so there's not an approximation that you can hang your hat on about where this storm is actually going to make landfall. All folks on the west coast of the Florida Peninsula should be prepared for potential major impacts. We have made a pre-landfall declaration request from FEMA for support, and the federal government has approved a portion of our request for pre-landfall items, and we expect the remaining parts of our request subsequent to landfall for debris and individual assistance once the storm hits will also be approved. We currently have 51 counties under a state of emergency. As of 3 o'clock, Milton has strengthened not just into a major hurricane, but a Category 5 hurricane, and not just a Category 5 hurricane, but a very strong 175 mile per hour sustained wind Category 5 hurricane. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty about what is going to happen in terms of this track. It is predicted that this will weaken, but it was not predicted that it would get this strong to begin with. So we can hope and pray that it does weaken. But as of right now, this is a ferocious hurricane. It is currently a little less than 700 miles southwest of Tampa. Storm surge watch has been issued for the Florida Gulf Coast from mainland Monroe County to the Dixie-Levy County line. Possibility of 8 to 12 feet of storm surge is forecast from the Anclote River to Englewood, including Tampa Bay. 5 to 10 foot peak storm surge is forecast from Yankeetown southward to the Anclote River and from Englewood southward to Bonita Beach, including Charlotte Harbor. And those numbers can change and they can go up in certain areas depending on how the storm ultimately approaches the Florida Peninsula. Hurricane watches have been issued for portions of west central Florida and the Nature Coast. Tropical storm watches extend further south and north through southwest Florida and the Keys and along northern Florida. The Florida Division of Emergency Management is actively addressing storm-related resource requests. They're currently in the process of fulfilling 850 missions. They've deployed everything from sandbags to shelf-stable meals to tens of thousands of water bottles to thousands of tarps. We've already sent truckloads of food and water to Central Florida in preparation for points of distribution site subsequent to the storm hitting. We're also coordinating the deployment of more than 2,000 feet of flood protection systems and prioritizing critical infrastructure like hospitals, wastewater treatment facilities, and electrical infrastructure. We have generators deployed to support special needs sheltering. We also have Starlinks deployed in areas that have asked for that. More than 200 ambulances and more than 30 paratransits are in Central Florida, ready to support first responder operations as appropriate. State of Florida is amassing fuel reserves ahead of Milton and staging it to be utilized as needed. Those quantities include 415,000 gallons of diesel, 389,000 gallons of gasoline, and there is, as I mentioned this morning, an additional 1.5 million gallons of both diesel and gasoline that are en route to the state. Now, there is currently no fuel shortage in the state of Florida. Fuel continues to arrive at Florida ports. However, there are long lines at some gas stations, and because you've had a run on gas, there have been gas stations that have run out of fuel, but they are being resupplied with the fuel. So we're going to continue to ensure that we have fuel coming, but they're still coming with the ports. We have some coming on the ground, so people can go. You may be in a line, but if your gas station runs out, there's going to be more fuel on the way. As I've mentioned, we have ramped up support for county debris removal operations. We're working this mission to supplement their mission 24/7 around the clock, and we're going to continue to do that all the way until it is no longer safe to do so. Please, local officials, these vendors, there's been vendors that they don't necessarily do, and then when there's some sunlight and people see they're not doing, then they start to work really hard. we got to get as much of this taken care of as possible. I know with Kevin and with Jared putting the state assets to supplement, it has made a really significant difference. We want to continue to do that. Those barrier islands like Pinellas, Manatee that are under evacuation orders, people obviously should heed those. But once that deadline passes, we're still going to have the debris removal operations ongoing all the way until we start to hit tropical storm force winds. So that's all the rest of today through the night, all day tomorrow, most likely into the beginning of Wednesday morning. So I appreciate all the effort that's gone into that on the state. We have deployed just on the state side to assist with the federal, with the local debris mission, over 300 dump trucks to help with debris. And in the last 36 hours, state assets have been able to do 12,000 cubic yards of debris removed from communities and brought to landfill. That's 663 total loads. So that's been a good mobilization. It will make a difference, but we need to keep doing that to mitigate the harm that could happen once the storm goes. Florida National Guard, State Guard, additional FDOT personnel, and Florida Highway Patrol are all engaged in that debris mission. For the storm, we have 5,000 National Guardsmen that have been mobilized, and we will have, before the storm hits, another 3,000 National Guardsmen that will be on duty. We're also deploying major heavy equipment to assist with debris removal, and of course, National Guard will be a big part of any search and rescue that needs to happen, as well as helping set up our points of distribution. These debris and landfill sites are open, not just from state assets or from the local debris contractors, but for private individuals and citizens. And so if you've got a pickup truck, you can load debris up. We want you to go and do that. I know we've had issues with those sites being being closed when they should be open 24. We've opened them when we've seen that, but let's keep this going until it's no longer safe to do so. We're also coordinating the evacuation of pets from Pinellas, Manatee, and DeSoto counties to Walton County's temporary emergency animal shelter. Obviously, we expect Floridians to take care of their own pets, but you've got some of these pets that are in shelters, and we don't want to see them abandoned in areas that are very, very dangerous. We're also delivering a 2,500-gallon water tanker to Suwannee County Animal Control and coordinating veterinary assistance post-landfall for Hillsborough County. So the linemen that are being pre-staged, as is our practice in Florida, we will have over 30,000 linemen. Many are still en route. Some of them are coming from as far away as California. You still have ongoing major power restoration missions in states like Georgia and North Carolina. That has taken a lot of resources, but all of our companies are committed to utilizing mutual aid. And so you're going to end up having over 30,000, which is a massive number of folks to be staged. And of course, we're anticipating significant power outages. And so it's important that we do that. We have hundreds of state search and rescue personnel embedded in potential impact sites along the West Coast to begin immediate rescue operations as soon as the storm passes. We've established a temporary base camp at Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg to support ongoing operations, not just with the current debris mission, but also post-landfall first responder missions. So you should have a plan, and you should be executing your plan, particularly if you're on the west coast of the Florida Peninsula. These evacuation orders have gone out in many of those places. I know more will be coming in areas that have not yet done that. Now's the time to do it. Storm's not going to hit today. Storm's not going to hit tomorrow. We may start to see some bad weather sometime on Wednesday morning, and then obviously we're anticipating sometime Wednesday evening for the storm to make landfall. So please, you do have time to get out, so please do it. Please execute that plan now at this point if you are in one of those danger zones. Gas, I know a lot of people have been filling up their tanks. You have seen some lines in places. I mentioned the fuel. Massive amounts of fuel are being brought in. but make sure you don't want to get caught on an interstate if you don't have gas in your tank. That's not going to be good, especially when so many people are using that. Some people may not know their evacuation zone. If you want to know your evacuation zone, go to floridadisaster.org/know to determine if you were in an evacuation zone. Obviously, a lot of people in the Suncoast part of Florida just went through Hurricane Helene. We saw a lot of storm surge. So I think most people have a good sense of that. But maybe not everybody knows that. So floridadisaster.org/know. Again, keep your eyes out, keep your ears out for any of these evacuations. I know a lot of the counties have already issued that. I think you're going to continue to see some more evacuations. Already we have Charlotte, Citrus, Hernando, Hillsborough, Lee, Manatee, Pasco, and Pinellas that have issued mandatory evacuations for some of their zones. As I mentioned this morning, tolls in West and Central Florida and Alligator Alley are suspended, and they will continue to be suspended until it's no longer necessary. Florida Department of Transportation is opening roadway shoulders as necessary to facilitate evacuation and ease congestion on I-4 and I-75. So the shoulder is completely open all the way until I guess it's in SR 417 in Central Florida from Tampa on I-4. That shoulder's open. The shoulder started to be open from the north on 75, I-10 working south. It should be completely open within the next hour. And so those are two roads that can typically have traffic anyways. Right now, the usage on I-75 is about 90% more than what would typically be happening right now. So FDOT will have that shoulder open. That does help to ease congestion and keep it moving as best you can, but just be prepared that there are a lot of people on the roads right now. You got time. It's not as if you have a delay, it's not as if the storm's going to come tonight. But FDOT is doing what they can to ameliorate that and to be able to keep things moving as best as possible. Visit Florida has emergency accommodation modules on Expedia, Priceline, and Booking.com for those evacuating. These modules will continue to provide real-time hotel availability and lodging resources. We're working with the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association to continue to, as is standard in these emergencies, encourage hotels to reduce prices. Floridians who are evacuating because of the storm, they typically will offer a distress rate. I know a lot of the properties have already published that.
We have been listening to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis talk to reporters ahead of Hurricane Milton's landfall expected Wednesday evening. The governor says Florida residents on the entire Gulf Coast of the state should be ready in case the hurricane does not make landfall where it is expected in the Tampa region. He says there's a possibility of 8 to 12 feet of storm surge in some areas. The governor says truckloads of supplies have already been sent to regions expected to be hit.
Another dangerous hurricane is set to slam into Florida. Milton is gathering strength in the Gulf of Mexico. Our Christian Benavides is tracking the storm.
But time is going to start running out very, very soon.
A message of urgency from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, warning residents to prepare for Hurricane Milton, including removing debris left from Hurricane Helene.
We need as much of this debris picked up as possible. This creates a safety hazard, and it also will increase the damage that Milton could do with flying debris.
Ben Lando lost his truck in Helene, but hopes his business can survive another punch.
It was coming from here, there, hitting together. I was like, that's missiles, even though I have shutters on every window.
Officials along the Gulf Coast say the hurricane-force winds will also keep first responders from helping those who ignore evacuation orders.
EMS won't be there, fire department won't be there, police department won't be there, so take heed to the warnings.
Storm surge could reach as high as 12 feet in parts of the Tampa Bay area. Another problem with debris clogging up storm drains, making flooding even worse.
We're going to board up, bag up, and leave.
Residents are lining up for miles to fill sandbags and their gas tanks.
Everybody's now starting to start filling up, but yeah, things are going to get a bit hectic.
It's an exhausting effort that's becoming too frequent for some.
I mean, I have to admit, there is a moment where I said, how many more times am I going to live through this? I think every islander did.
Milton would be the first major hurricane to make direct landfall in the Tampa Bay area since 1921. Cristian Benavides, CBS News, St. Petersburg.
Another powerful storm system heads towards Florida this week. Hurricane Milton is its name, and the National Hurricane Center has upgraded Milton to a Category 5 storm. The hurricane is projected to make landfall on the state's western Gulf Coast by Wednesday. The International Space Station captured this extraordinary video of the storm over the Gulf of Mexico Monday. Forecasters say winds already exceed 175 miles per hour. Hurricane Helene only topped out at 140 miles per hour at peak intensity. CBS News correspondent Nicole Valdez joins us from Fort Myers Beach, Florida. Nicole, what's the latest on the storm and how are people preparing for this wallop where you are?
John, good evening. Well, sadly, Fort Myers Beach is not an area where people will tell you they can take much more. Just look at the building behind me. This has been sitting this way for more than 2 years. We are talking about Hurricane Ian that impacted this area in September of 2022. And it's evident this is an area that is nowhere near recovering from that storm. Just about a week ago, they dealt with Hurricane Helene and saw a storm surge then. Now people are preparing for what could be a catastrophic situation once again for Fort Myers Beach. The storm surge forecast, really the focus here and the reason for it, as you can tell, we are just feet away from the water's edge here. This island has been evacuated. People told to get out of here several hours ago, and it's really days ahead of the storm's expected landfall. The decision made by local officials recognizing and taking the lessons from those past storms. The Lee County Sheriff here, Carmine Marcino, spoke to us candidly earlier, saying there is a reason those evacuation orders are mandatory, and if you don't leave, that's a risk you are taking.
When you make that choice and that decision to stay at 45 miles an hour, we no longer respond. So now if they need 911 assistance, no one's coming, and it's already too late.
And as we spoke, he mentioned, unfortunately, he worries this area could once again be crushed in this storm if it continues growing and intensifying at the rate it is, John. So people here, of course, have spent the last few hours piling on those sandbags, getting them to their homes, their businesses, getting out of here and taking this storm very seriously.
Nicole Valdez in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. Thank you very much, Nicole.